just a confession. I'm not a walker. I don't like mud. My mum was like, don't get dirty. It's all about discovering nature, urban environments, public realm, shops, cafes on your doorstep. There is a hierarchy of like how connected to nature people are, and the UK is at the bottom. So that's why I really love all of these like rewilding projects that you've got going on, like beavers and storks coming back to London. One of the most surprising things is how many people love our walking challenges.
I think I've got kind of an easy question for you at the start, which is, what is your idea of a dream walk? What key aspects would make a walk perfect to you?
I love urban walks, and because I love exploring cities and places where people live, and through my job I've been able to travel to quite a few cities, and actually London is still the best. But what I love about urban walks is around every corner there's something different to see, and we're so lucky here. There's so many parks and green spaces. I think what makes a perfect walk is something where you're kind of winding through parks and green spaces. You can pop in and grab a coffee, you can refill your water bottle with water, and then you can also end up walking along one of like London's rivers and then back round again. I also really appreciate being able to start and end a walk with public transport, and we're so lucky in London. The public transport is incredible. In other places and other cities, it's much harder, and I think that makes that's one of my favorite walks. And yeah, just a confession, I'm not a walker. I don't like mud. My mum was like, don't get dirty, like to me all the time. And that's what she used to say to me. And I'd be like, ah. And so I never used to go out walking. I never even played with mud or clay or anything like that when I was a kid. We just didn't do it. It was just like, no, keep your clothes clean, your hands clean, stay home. And that's really what it was like. But actually I did, a couple of years ago, I went on my first solo hike, and it was for work. And honestly, I had the most amount of anxiety I think I've ever had. My husband was like, what is wrong with you? And I was just like, I don't know, I've got to go do this walk, it's for work. I've got to go to be on my own, it's 6 miles, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And honestly, having been totally terrified and having a walking app, I did it and I had the best time. I was just like, I'm free, I'm here. I was not intimidated at all. I fell over once. There was a lot of mud. There was lots of poo everywhere. But it was just like, I was just like so unbelievably impressed with myself. So I think I'm so glad that I just forced myself to do that, even though I had like panic and stress and all sorts of stuff. And it's just, the benefits are just so joyful, and I felt so lucky. And like two years on, I just like think back to that day when I went on a 6-mile walk on my own in the countryside in the middle of nowhere with no one around, and it was brilliant. So yeah, I think I've been on a journey, and I'm still on that journey now.
I love walking by myself a lot. But I think I love walking with people a lot more. And when I was doing some research for this, I found a quote from Jane Austen, which is not who I expected, but it was, walking provides shared seclusion for crucial conversations, which I thought was really beautiful and kind of pretty apt, right? Like when you go on a walk, you can have moments of silence, but then also have these very interesting and in-depth conversations that maybe you didn't expect that come from things. I wondered, what do you think about, I guess, getting lost, both in because your app is all about kind of wayfinding and staying on the map. What do you think about, I guess, getting lost in both conversation and physically?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think there is a lot of people out there, maybe some in the room, they don't need a guide to help them go on a walk, but actually there's a lot of people that do. Like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I don't know if they still do it, but when I was younger, they told me never eat shredded wheat, north, east, south, west. And so I thought north was in front of me. So wherever I go, I'm like, that's north. And my husband looks at me like, well, what are you on about? I'm like, never eat shredded wheat, north. And it's a problem when you don't know where you're going. So, I've definitely been, like I said, on a journey. But the thing about walking, especially with friends and other people, is that, it's less intense. Like I know I might seem extroverted, but I'm a secret introvert and I like small groups. But I think that the power of walking is that actually you don't necessarily have to have eye contact with people, and that you can have that a shared experience as you're going around and you're walking, and you can actually talk. And I feel like actually it's a great way to talk to my husband, a great way to talk to my son, especially. Like I find like he's 12 now. He was like, much younger in that picture. At home, he just goes, at me. But when we're walking, he's like, oh yeah, chatting away, telling me about school and stuff like that. And I think it's that kind of, it's just that ability, that freedom to just be able to like open your mind. And the space point is, it creates space, and you can take up space as well. And I just really love that about being outside and in nature.
Yeah, me too. I feel like, sorry, you say something, I'm like, yeah, exactly. I feel the same. I love getting lost. Especially in a city. Maybe because I'm from London, like I find getting lost in the countryside quite scary. But getting lost in a city, I'm like, there's always a way out. Like you can always find your way. And one of my favourite things about growing up in London was it was very weird actually. It was all like this like thing for kids in state schools. They would send you to some professional who felt bad that you were in a state school to teach you something. And my professional who felt bad for state school kids was based in the Ministry of Justice, and she was teaching me Spanish. And so I would this is a completely true story. My mum is here and I can see her laughing. But like every Tuesday I would go to the Ministry of Justice, and I would have like a half an hour Spanish lesson and then leave and get a bit lost. And it was one of the first times I felt freedom, I guess, as like a child growing up in London, to then be by myself experiencing London in central London. And I would walk through St James's Park and through the West End and like discover it for myself. And ever since then, I've kind of tried to orient myself in cities by getting a bit lost first. I moved to Paris when I was 18 and I didn't have any phone signal. And so I would just like get lost and see what happened. And it meant that I just love it. Like I love getting lost.
Let's ask the audience, who gets anxious when they get lost? No one gets anxious. A little bit. Yeah? Someone at the back, you get anxious when you get lost? Yeah.
There's a word that I really like in French, and I'm sorry, I know I quoted something earlier and I'm now going to say a French word and sound really pretentious. I have another quote saved for later, so bear with me. But the word is flâneur, and I've got a definition for it, which is urban male stroller, lounger, saunterer, or loafer. It means a lot of things, but flânerie in French is the act of strolling, with all its accompanying associations. I took that definition from Wikipedia, I'm sorry. But it kind of covers it, right? How do you feel? You said you're not a late person. How do you feel about strolling as a way of, I guess, discovery?
Well, I guess that's what we do. That's like almost like should be our kind of subtitle to Go Jauntly. And it's all about discovering nature, urban environments, public realm, shops, cafes on your doorstep. And that's what we try to do. Like one of the most popular, I know you guys are all walkers, so this won't be your problem, but a lot of people say to me, I don't know where to walk. I don't know where to go. I don't know what's around me. And a lot of people just don't have the confidence to walk. There's also loads of other barriers to walking. So things like not knowing what the terrain is like, not knowing if it's step-free, if it's wheel-friendly, if it's pram-friendly, if there's benches, if there's toilets, if there's baby changing. There's lots of different barriers to walking, and we might feel much more confident to do it, but a lot of people don't. And so what we want to do with our walks is we'll point out when there's benches, we'll point out where there's toilets, we'll point out there's a cafe, and that helps break down some of the barriers to walking. And that's just a really important thing, because I think not everyone is a confident walker.
Yeah, definitely. It's also so nice. Maybe one of the reasons I like urban walks so much is because you can stop and get a coffee, and like you can stop whenever you want. And if you desire a museum, there probably will be one. Like you can find whatever you want. And something about, I guess, discovery in London in particular, although I guess most other cities would have this, is history. London has been continuously occupied since the Roman times, so 2,000 years. And I was having a conversation with someone the other day who was talking about, in the Roman times, you would have heard Arabic on Harrow Road, which I thought was amazing because obviously today you still hear Arabic on Harrow Road, and that sort of history continuing. And in London, you've got so many layers of stories on top of each other through history that can often be discovered by walking. One of the ones I'm thinking about quite a lot at the moment is the River Westbourne, which it starts in Highgate and it goes all the way down here. And in the 1800s, it was put underground, but you can still see it. If anyone knows Grand Junction, it goes sort of around the outside of that. And if you go to Sloane Square Station, you can still hear it. If you're on a platform, you can hear it going over the top. And then it's obviously in the place name, right? Like the area Westbourne is called that because of the River Westbourne. Where I live, it's next to a road called Riversdale Road. And it's because there's a lost river that was right next to it. Riversdale means like the bank at the side. A pub I really like is called the Bank of Friendship because it was on a river bank. And people from Islington and Hackney would come to each other and meet at the riverbank. So there are all these things hidden in plain sight with the naming. I wondered, have you got any stories of, I guess, a hidden London that you discovered through walking?
So we worked with Transport for London on a really cool project. It was like a dream come true. They came to us and say, look, we're going to newly name the London Overground lines. And as you may be aware, they named them the Suffragette line, the Lioness line, the Windrush line, the Mildmay line. And obviously, naturally, there was some stupid backlash about why you're calling this woke nonsense crap. But what they wanted to do was try and explain why these lines were called these things. And so we were tasked with creating hop-on and hop-off walks that started and ended along the lines. So with the Windrush line, obviously there's like an amazing history from the Windrush generation and like the wider migration of people across the world into London. But what we did is we worked with the Windrush Foundation and various other organisations to curate amazing walking tours that spoke to the history that you might not be aware of. So we start in, I can't remember now, let me think. We start in Dalston, we go and visit things like the C.L.R. James Library and like various other sort of places around there. Then we get on the train, we head to New Cross and we go and visit sort of different sites, including the awful New Cross massacre, and then we get on the train to Peckham, where we celebrate vibrant culture, and we visit places like the Prince of Peckham and lots of other, like Angel's Bakery. Some people might know it's like amazing cakes from Nigeria, and then we get on the train to Clapham, and then there's like incredible hidden history all the way from Clapham to Brixton, where we end up at the Black Cultural Archives, the Windrush Square and various other places. And we try and tell that story, but not just story of place, but story of people as well. So all of the people that stood before us that helped make London the amazing, vibrant, best place to live in the world place. And we did similar for the Suffragette line and the Mildmay line. The Mildmay line speaks to LGBTQ plus history and also all of the work that was done with the AIDS crisis in the 80s and so on. And I really highly recommend those walks. You can do them in sections as well. So you could just do like a couple of legs of the Windrush line, a couple of legs of the Suffragette line. And and they're great ways to experience the city and see new things and see how it all ties together as well.
Do you have a favourite walk on Go Jauntly?
That walk that I did, the 6 miler, oh my days, seriously, right? So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I had to go to Wales and I had to get a train and I had to hire a car, which I was not comfortable with, but there we are, hired a car. And it's a place called Chirk. And I don't know if anyone ever been to Chirk. Yeah, they've got like this incredible aqueduct and viaduct and they intersect and you go up through hills and valleys and then you like have amazing landscapes and vistas and then you have to kind of like scramble up somewhere and go across a wooden bridge and then back down along the river. The Chirk Aqueduct walking tour is like, I highly recommend it. Yeah, but there's so many, like the TfL Overground line walks, they're amazing. Also the Capitol Ring, has anyone done the Capitol Ring? Have you done all of it? What did you think?
Wonderful.
It's good, isn't it? It start and ends at station. It goes around the sort of outskirts, sort of like zone 2, zone 3 of London, and perfect for like weekends. People absolutely love it. Grab your friends, you know, make a day of it. There's pubs, there's cafes en route and stuff like that. They're really, really great. A great way to see London, and you actually get some like really nice vistas as well and stuff like that. So yeah.
Let's go to the audience. Have you got any questions?
I think for me, the one thing that I've noticed, because when we create our walks, thank you for the question, when we create our walks, we always try and make sure that there are step-free walks available or alternatives. Because I think as an able-bodied person, when I'm walking around London, I don't mind climbing up steps. Don't mind not having a drop curb. But actually for a lot of people, it's a real problem. And I actually broke my ankle on a client walk. And so I know exactly what it's like trying to navigate those kind of things. So I think London is better than a lot of places that I've been to. They try and do a lot around the public realm. So I'm not sure if drop curbs would be enough, but things like, it's just, oh God, there's so much. Now you've got me talking about it. There's things like bollards, like in the middle of the pavement. Like, okay, they're there to stop, I don't know, sometimes motorcyclists coming through or things like that, but they're in the way, and they're, you know, a barrier for people who are partially sighted or blind. There's also a real problem in Southeast London, where I'm from, with pavement parking. And even though, like, technically it's banned in London, pavement parking, and we're quite lucky, but as the cars get bigger and the pavements get kind of narrower because there's bins and there's like electric stuff and there's bollards and it just means that it's much harder to walk. And I was quite, when I first started Go Jauntly, I thought I was just making a walking app, but I didn't realise that actually I'm making a content platform as well. I'm creating experiences for people and stuff like that. And yeah, just going back to my point, now, whenever I'm walking, I can't unsee barriers, because I'm tasked with going, okay, you need to make a step-free walk. You need to highlight all of the barriers, and there are just so many. It's kind of hard to pick one thing. So another barrier is like low-hanging branches. Like, who would have thought like a low-hanging branch would be a problem? But actually it can be a problem for people, especially if you're like not as mobile. But yeah, I think my biggest bugbear, even in London, is probably pavement parking. Yeah, and if we could make sure that that was banned nationwide as well, like that would be amazing. But I just don't think it's going to happen, ever. What we try and do is, like, accessibility is like on a spectrum in a way. So what we try and do is describe what you see. So you can decide whether something is accessible enough for you. So for example, with a walk, on our photo-led guides, we'll say there's a steep incline, there is a steep decline, there's steps, or there's no steps, or there's no missing drop curb, because it's really hard to create something that's like fully accessible for everyone, because there are so many different needs and concerns. But what we from the get-go try to be as accessible as possible. So there's things like voiceover, enlarged text, descriptions and stuff like that. So but we also make sure that we don't just create long walks. So if you go on sort of certain apps, I won't name them, a lot of the walks are like really long. Like 6 miles is really long for me, but for some of you guys it might not be very long. So you will be able to find in the app, if you search your location, you'll be able to say, I only want to do half a mile or a mile. So we have walks like that are short, which are great for, you know, not only those who struggle with like walking great distances, but for kids. You know, like if you've got kids, they're going to be moaning like after 15 minutes, like maybe even sooner, and they're going to want snacks and stuff like that, and it's just going to be a. But so that's why we have like loads and loads of lovely short walks as well. So yeah, so you're absolutely right. So that's why I really like circular walks as well, which we try and do so that you end up back where you came. So like if you did drive or you need to get on a certain train, they start and end at the same spot. And the other thing that we try and do with our walks is make sure that we share where the nearest bus stop is. Just little things like that. And also like where, you know, if you want to cut the walk short, this is a good place to cut it off, that kind of thing. So yeah, we do try and think about it. We don't get everything right, but we do try. One thing that I want to say is that we adopted a privacy by design approach with the app. So what I don't want to be tracked everywhere I'm going, and I was really, really conscious of that. I think things have sort of changed slightly, but maybe they're going back again with AI and stuff like that. But we don't track your every move. So we'll let you know where you are on the map with your little GPS thing, but we don't trace you. So we're not like Strava or AllTrails or things like that, where they trace every step of the way. So what we do is we give you options, we'll show you where the route is, and then we can take like a kind of a snapshot of where you are. So we'll take a little snapshot, and then we'll be able to compare it with where you are on the step of the walk, and we'll know whether you've completed it. But just speaking directly to your point, obviously when COVID happened, it was like quite challenging because we're walking out, want to get people out and about, but then they were like, no, stay home, don't go anywhere. And so we were like, whoa, okay, no one walk. We had like messages in the app like stay home, protect the NHS and stuff like that. But then as like the pandemic kind of evolved and the government directive changed, you could go out for like an hour a day. Do you remember that? But you were only allowed to go out once, and you couldn't stop anywhere. You had to go back where you were. And so what we saw is that people were literally going on much shorter walks. So they would go on 20-minute walks, 15-minute walks, and they would more often than not be walking to places like Aldi or the grocery shops, basically. That's where they were going. So we saw that. And then when it was, I think it was around May time, you could go further afield. And Boris was like, yeah, go somewhere, but don't mingle and stuff like that. Then we saw people walking further distances. Instead of doing like their sort of 20, 30-minute walk, they were doing like 5 to 8 kilometers, that kind of thing. So we definitely see patterns and stuff like that. But one of the most surprising things is how many people love our walking challenges. So our walking challenges, like I mentioned before, we've got a couple live at the moment. One is called the 2026 kilometer challenge. And the idea behind that is you try and walk 26 kilometers in 2026. Confession, I have never managed it. It's so hard. Some people complete it by April, but and I'm just like, and then I find out that he's retired and he's a night walker and he can't sleep. I'm like, that's how you do it by April. And this is because he told me himself. I wasn't stalking him. So people really love those. We've got another one called the 2 Million March Challenge, and that is to walk 2 million steps in 2026. Last year we had a 1 million step challenge. I was like, how long is it going to take to walk? I mean, we worked it out, it was about 3,000 steps a day to walk that much. And I actually did it by May. But that's because also we count every single step that you do, so to the toilet, to the bathroom, to the kitchen and stuff like that. So I absolutely smashed it. So we've got a new one. And people love those challenges. And what they love most is they love the little digital badge that they get. I feel like we're all kids inside and we all want a sticker. We all want a sticker to say, well done, you've done a good job. And that's kind of what that feature does. And people who sign up to the challenge, they stick around for a long time. And yeah, I mean, I love getting a badge as well, I have to say. but that's kind of one of the most interesting things.
I read a quite funny article about Strava accidentally showing military bases, because so many people that were in these military bases would be like tracking their runs each morning. And when Strava tracked all the data and they published it, and people were able to find, I think it was like 2 or 3 hidden US military bases, because they were like, that's weird. Why are people running every day? So I'm glad that you don't track people in the same way.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because I'm glad I've done it, but then I do get a lot of feedback saying, why aren't you tracking me? I'm like, so I think in future I might have to give the option to say, like, you can be tracked if you want to, but you don't have to be, because
if you're on a military base, say no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's tricky. It's I've kind of quite got a lot of morals, and so I've tried to kind of stay on my path, stay on my journey. But then things change in society. Like everyone, phones are ubiquitous now, and people are used to being tracked and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah, I think we're really lucky, I think, in this country to have a lot of green space. I think what has probably, I'm just trying to think now, what has surprised me the most is how we're actually, like, statistically the least connected population to nature in the world. Like, we are like number 78 or something in the most connected populace. Like, I haven't said that right, have I? But what am I trying to say? What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that there is a hierarchy of like how connected to nature people are, and the UK is at the bottom. And like, despite actually having quite a lot of green space, that's surprising. But then the other really stark fact is that actually we're not as biodiverse as some other countries. So whilst we have parks and green spaces, it's all of a certain type. It's not like rich in different types of nature. Actually, it's quite nature depleted. So I think that was like, I guess for me, as coming into it as, you know, not necessarily, not, you know, it's like I said, my nature connection, I'm still on a journey. I feel like so much more, you know, at one with nature now, but it's just really, really surprising actually how nature depleted the UK is. And I think that's just really sad. And so that's why I really love all of these like rewilding projects that you've got going on, like beavers and storks coming back to London. I mean, like, you know, we've got so much work to do to green up our cities. I think, you know, I look to places like Singapore and stuff like that who are already working on it and greening up their cities, and it's just amazing. Like, that's my dream, for that to happen here. And projects like yours and what Michael's doing are hopefully going to go some way to it. But yeah, and the concept of rewilding is actually not new. Like, I learned another fact. There's this lady called Ada Salter. Has anyone heard of Ada Salter? She was like a pioneering woman in like the late 1800s. She was a Quaker. Her husband was a doctor, and they lived in Bermondsey. And in Bermondsey, it was slums back then. You know, it was really, really deprived, really, really poor. But actually, she went on to become like a mayor, like a female mayor back then. It's brilliant. But not only you know, through her kind of platform and the work that she did, she actually managed to raise money to distribute money to like the people who were living in the slums so that they can green up their neighborhoods. So she literally gave them pots, you know, mud, compost and plants, and started that whole concept of rewilding. She also, I think she planted something ridiculous. I don't know the exact number, but someone else might know, but it was like thousands and thousands of trees. And, you know, and that's kind of what we need to do again today. Like, you know, none of these ideas in a way are new. We've just forgotten them because of our disconnect with nature.
1 in 6 species in the UK is at threat of extinction, which is shockingly high. And there's something I think about a lot called the shifting baselines theory, which if you've come to these talks before, you'll probably have heard me talk about. But it's the idea, and it seems pretty self-explanatory, right, when you say it, right? The idea is you can't miss what you don't know. And so how are you meant to know that the UK is so struggling with biodiversity? Because you don't know it, because you've never seen what it should be like. There's a deeply upsetting statistic of, I think it's like 70,000 birds. We're 70,000 birds less since 1970. I think that's right. It may not be. Don't quote me, but it's about that number, which means that even the soundscape of the UK is completely different. It's quieter, as well as being less colourful, and we just don't notice it. And then you go into these green spaces. There's a whole development that's just happened next to my office, which has turned an area into this beautiful, very green, like lovely looking space. But it's just grass. And it's quite like, if you know what you're looking for, you can see it's quite biodiversity dead, which is quite upsetting. I don't have really an end to that was positive, just it's quite sad. Any other questions?
So my son's in secondary school now, but when he was in primary school, do you remember when it was 40 degrees in London and it was just like end of days? They had hot play at school, and I've never heard of hot play before, but it basically means that they don't let the kids out because it's hot outside. And and the reason why is because they go into the playgrounds and there's no shade, there's no covering, there's no nature. You know, trees can help reduce the temperature on the ground. I don't have an answer to that, but I just feel like with the climate crisis, you know, it's unfolding. We're living through it now. We're gonna have to future-proof the playgrounds and things like that, and those spaces for those kids. And I don't know what the answer is, but throwing money at the problem feels like, yeah, tarmac and stuff. Yeah. I did meet a guy once in the Natural History Museum at a nature event, and he said he was working on this exact project, and that was 2 years ago. And I haven't seen anything happen, but it's really sad. It's really sad. I don't have the answer to that, but I just feel like we have to campaign for what we want. We have to, you know, moan at the teachers, because I feel like moaning at the teachers actually does work from personal experience.
It's a problem at so many schools around here because there's so many children in very small spaces with like no playgrounds. And so the playgrounds that you do have, like Moada saying, are completely just like tarmacked and hot. And then the kids are struggling to learn and there's nowhere for them to go. There's the local secondary school is right next to the Westway. So the pollution levels in there are crazy. Like if you had a little forest garden, it would, as well as making it a bit cooler, also take away some of the pollution.
Yeah, amazing. Great. Thank you.